Jacques Attali is a man of many facets, a founder and former president of the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development, the author of 40 books, a pianist and conductor. He can look at life from all sides. He had the ear of President Francois Mitterand and attended many top-level international meetings. But his favourite role is that of prophet, looking at the world and where it's going. And as such, he faced our Euronews cameras.
Monsieur Attali, bonjour et bienvenue sur Euronews. Les élections européennes sont là.
The Euro elections. The politicians say there is a lot at stake. But it seems that the voters are more apathetic about politics than ever.
Il y a comme une fatigue, une lassitude.
Non, c'est pas exactement ça.
No, it's not quite like that. I believe European voters are smart, and they know that when they choose a mayor or a local council, they're making an impact. They're electing someone who has power, yet someone they can see every day. And when they vote for a president or a government, they know how that will affect their lives. But in the European elections, there is no European government. There is no true European power. Things are a bit more hazy, and their enthusiasm is blunted by the complexity of the system. People will only truly have a vote when they can elect a president of Europe.
Do you think this is because of lack of drama? Because we're not even electing a new president of the European Commission?
I think the most important point is what's at stake, and there's a lot to play for. Normally, in these sort of elections, if one follows the prevailing political winds, there can be a complete change at the top. Today, the majority of the Euro Parliament seems to be leaning to the right, but the Commission doesn't reflect that. So the system is incredibly complicated.
There's a wide gap between economic and political integration in Europe. Has this made the crisis worse?
We need to understand this. China is an integrated country, as is America, India too, but not Europe. To a certain extent, the European project was hampered by the fall of the Berlin Wall. I believe that if that had not happened, we would today have a president of Europe, Western Europe, that is. But, happily, the wall came down, and that's good. But in some ways it reshuffled the pack and put back the project in favour of building a new European powerhouse. Today, amidst the current crisis, we need a political body as strong as that in the USA or in China, which can launch a new budget or infrastructure works, research, or great trans-European projects. Let's remember that no one in Europe is talking about nationalisation. We can talk about Europeanisation, but today it's clear we can't propose taking businesses into public ownership, even if certain projects should be the property of the European Union itself, if that were ever conceivable.
If we look a little closer at the context in which these elections are taking place, it seems that we've rarely lived in such tense political times. The American dream has died.
I don't think we can say that the American dream has died, because the US can always bounce back and rejuvenate itself and start again. China has shown the same attributes. But it is true that today the idea of public services, a social justice system, a state which respects the individual and the world in general, i.e. the European ideal with education and protection for all, well, that is something which Europe can be and should be proud of.
Est un modèle qui devrait devenir universel. Et l'Europe devrait plus encore être fière du rêve européen.
Then why are European leaders so wary about defending these ideals?
Because European leaders are happy to send only mediocre politicians to Brussels. I repeat, they're happy if only mediocre politicians end up in Brussels.
Why?
Because then they can keep the real power at home. Apart from Jacques Delors, we have never had, over 30 or 40 years, a top-drawer Commission president. Simply because each time someone goes to Brussels, everyone else can be certain that he'll be too mediocre to cast a long shadow. And therefore France, Britain, Germany, Italy, they can all keep their autonomy and never face a strong rival in Brussels.
There are 500 million Europeans now. If the dominant view is that of a federal Europe, do you think this election will change the European direction?
peut changer la façon dont l'Europe est conduite.
Non, ça c'est une distinction.
No, that would mean a distinction between left and right. And for the time being, the European left and right, the main parties that is, are both supportive of the Lisbon Treaty.
Plus important encore.
The most important thing, more important than these elections, is the ratification of Lisbon, which is a vital step on the road to European integration. Then, if Lisbon is ratified, European elections will take on a new importance because they'll let us advance still further. History teaches us that if Europe doesn't get its act together in the next few years with a proper European government, the whole European project will collapse. Because if we don't move forward, we'll fall back. And if we don't have one finance minister, one budget, one economic policy, one social policy, the euro itself will have no meaning, because the euro cannot exist without a single-minded European discipline.
So the EU of tomorrow must be completely integrated politically or will cease to exist.
Exactly. Or each nation will revert to protectionism, and that is a threat to world growth. Either we're heading towards a world government, or we're going to put national issues first.
This idea of a world government will frighten many people.
Indeed, that's only to be expected because it seems like a fantasy. But there is already global authority in many areas. In airline security, in football, in banking. And even if it's hard to think of a European government at the moment, which is there but very weak, Europe can at least pass on its experience to the world. If we're not capable of creating an economic framework alongside a political framework in Europe, then we're never going to do it on a global scale. And then the world economic model will break up and we'll be back to the Great Depression.
There have been 2 meetings of the G20 since the start of this crisis.
It's good that they've taken place. The question is to know what happened between the G20 in London and the meeting in New York in October. If nothing happened, and I fear that's so, it's going to end up as a farce. If, on the other hand, they put in place all the new rules they talked about in London for hedge funds, banks, ratings agencies, control mechanisms, then we are on the verge of a global authority, which is utterly vital. And that's important for everyone, not simply for countries with tax havens, but for all economies around the world.
And that includes American and Chinese tax havens.
And Britain too.
Is there a bit of hypocrisy there?
For the time being, one can say it risks becoming something of a comedy.
Merci pour votre présence sur Euronews.
Merci.